Добрый день.
Good
Меня
morning,
зовут
good
Virukova
day.
Yana.
My name is
Я
Yana Virukova.
аналитик
I'm the
отдела
analyst
информационной
of the
безопасности
IT security
Positive
department
Technologies.
at Positive
Сегодня мы с вами
Technologies. And today
познакомимся с
we shall get acquainted
кибертрендами,
to
с
trends of
кибербезопасностью,
cybersecurity, cyber
которая
trends
состоялась в
of
2020 году, и
cybersecurity, the
посмотрим
things that
тенденции и тренды в
have been happening
2021.
in 2020, and we shall see what is
Собственно,
happening
как
in
будет организован мой
2021.
доклад?
So,
В первую
a few
очередь
words
мы
about my
посмотрим
presentation. First, we shall
главные
take a
цифры
look at
года,
the
ознакомимся
main
с ними,
figures for
посмотрим
the
динамику
year.
атак, как
We will
вообще
see the dynamics of
поквартально,
attacks
ежемесячно
per
увеличивались
quarter and per
атаки,
month,
был ли рост.
whether there has been growth
Ознакомимся
of
с тем, кого
attacks,
атакуют,
and we'll see
посмотрим мотивы,
who
которые
and what
преследуют
is being
преступники в
attacked.
своих
We'll
атаках,
see motives
и
for attacks,
непосредственно
and of
ознакомимся
course,
с методами
we'll
проведения
get to
атак,
know the
то, от чего нужно
ways the
защищаться,
attacks are conducted. I
и
mean,
ознакомимся с
what you
отраслевой
should defend
спецификой.
against.
Вишенка
We'll
на
also
торте —
go
это
and look
прогнозы
into the industries
2021
and share
года.
in a cake forecast for 2021.
Собственно,
So,
данные в моем докладе
these
взяты из наших
data
исследований.
in my presentation is
Мы
coming from the
ежеквартально
research that we
выпускаем
have made. Every quarter
аналитики
we
на
release
тему актуальных
analytics
киберугроз в
on
третьем
the
квартале,
urgent
первом, втором,
cybersecurities and cyber
четвертом,
threats in
и
every
годовые итоги
single
подводим. Еще мы
quarter,
делаем разные
obviously,
исследования
and
на тему,
also
например,
we
рынка доступов в
release
даркнете.
an annual
Собственно,
report.
знакомимся с
Also,
ними можно
we
по двум
write about
QR-кодам. Первый
access
QR-код ведет
markets
на
on
итоги
dark web.
2020
You see,
года.
here are the
Большая часть
QR
данных
codes
взята
which can
именно
help
из
you
этой
to
аналитики.
download
И со всеми исследованиями можно
which
ознакомиться
can
на
help
нашем
you to
сайте.
download
Немножко запутанный там
these
подход к
reports.
ним, но по
It's a bit
QR можно прям
complicated,
сразу
but
попасть.
using QR you can actually get there.
Начнем
So, let us
с
begin
итогов 2020 года.
with the
В общем,
summary for
этот год был
2020.
уникален.
The
События,
year has
произошедшие в
been
нем,
special in
они
every
сказались не только
single
на жизни
way.
обычных
The
людей,
events
но
that
и
happened
на
reflected not
нашей
only on
сфере,
ordinary
сфере
people, but
информационной
our domain
безопасности.
as well, IT
Рост
security.
количества атак в 2020
The number
году
of
по сравнению с
attacks in
2019
2020
составил целых
increased by
51%. Далее мы
51%. That is a
посмотрим
lot.
диаграмму,
Let
которая
us look
будет
at the diagram
демонстрировать
that will
ежемесячный
demonstrate
прирост, и я
monthly
упомяну,
growth,
сколько
and I will
был прирост в
also
среднем в
mention the
квартале.
annual quarterly growth.
7 из 10 атак
7 out of
в
10
годовой
attacks
нашей аналитике
annually
были целенаправленными, то есть
were targeted attacks,
злоумышленники
meaning
атаковали
that
конкретные компании, либо
there was
конкретную отрасль,
attack
либо даже
on a
конкретного
particular
человека.
company
И
or
нельзя
even
не
particular
сказать о
person. And
главном инфоповоде, наверное, даже
the very
2020
important
года —
info
это шифровальщики.
reason of the
Собственно,
2020
45%
is
атак на
encryption.
организации с использованием
45%,
вредоносного
of
программного
course, with
обеспечения были
malware
совершены именно
were
программными
made by the
вымогателями, операторами программ-вымогателей.
ransomware operators. Yes.
Собственно, в подтверждение моих слов про рост количества атак, динамика атак.
To actually
Ежемесячно
confirm
в
the statement
среднем
of the growth of attacks,
количество атак
here's the dynamic of
прирастало
attacks.
на 10%.
So,
Это не значит, что каждый месяц каждый квартал мы детектировали
every
на 10%
month we
атак
see the
больше.
growth by
К примеру, в первом
10% on
квартале прирост
average.
составил
In the first
22%,
quarter
а в
it was
третьем и четвертом
22%,
это
in the
были
third and fourth
3-4%.
quarter
Это
that was
связано с тем, что,
3 and
во-первых, прошла основная
4%
волна атак
respectively,
с тематикой
mainly because
ковида,
the main wave of
и,
attacks
возможно,
related to
злоумышленники
COVID has
готовятся к
passed,
более
and
каким-то
probably
крупным,
the
серьезным
attackers
атакам.
were
Плюс здесь
preparing
стоит
for
отметить,
more
что
significant new
такое,
types of
возможно,
attacks.
может показаться
Of
не очень большое
course,
количество
you
атак,
might seem that the overall number of
обусловлено
attacks
тем,
is
что, к
not that
примеру,
high, but
массовые
that's
атаки, в
mainly
которых
caused by the fact that
злоумышленники
mass attacks,
отправляли
where attackers
фишинговые
were sending
письма
phishing
жертвам,
emails to the
мы,
victims.
ну и они, естественно, были
And of
массовые, то есть
course,
там
that was
множество
mass
адресов, множество
emailing with a number of
получателей, мы
addresses
отмечали
and
как
receivers.
один
Therefore,
инцидент для себя
that was
и не
highlighted
учитывали
as a
его именно
single
так. То есть на
incident. That
самом
is the
деле
way we
количество в
counted
разы
it.
больше.
So the number is actually much,
Собственно,
much bigger.
давайте ознакомимся с тем,
Now,
кого
let us
атакуют.
look at those who
Чаще
are
всего
being
это
attacked.
госучреждения,
Mostly those
промышленность и
are
медицинские
governmental
учреждения. Этот топ не менялся
administration
с
bodies,
2019 года. В 2019 он был примерно
industrial
таким же, процентом много других.
companies, and medical
В общем,
healthcare
эти
companies,
три
and
отрасли,
also
они
financial
атакуются
companies.
очень
This particular
интересно
industries
злоумышленникам,
are
и они
very
там с
often
радостью
attacked by
пытаются проэксплуатировать уязвимости,
by
засоциалить,
attackers.
атаковать использование вредоносов.
Of course, the ways to
86%
exploit are
всех
very
атак были
diverse.
как раз-таки
86%
направлены на
of all of the
организации, лишь
attacks were targeted
14%
on the
это атаки на частных
organizations,
лиц.
and the remaining 14%
Какие мотивы
were
преследуют
attacks on
злоумышленники в своих
private
атаках?
individuals.
В первую
So,
очередь,
what are the motives of
мотив
the attackers?
финансовой выгоды
First of
был
all, of course,
37%
financial benefit.
атак на организации.
37% of attacks on
Здесь
businesses and companies
что можно сказать?
and
Такой процент
organizations.
обусловлен
This
тем,
particular
что,
percent
опять
is
же,
reason
атаки
because
программ-вымогателей, у
the
которых,
ransomware attacks,
естественно, самая
which
главная цель — это получение финансовой выгоды,
which
в
are
этом году
targeted on
очень
financial
сильно
benefit, The ransomware attacks have grown very significantly in 2020. Attacks just for the sake of it, because of some ideas, high ideas, that was only 1%. And the main motive, of course, is stealing of data breaches. Today, attackers are mining for data. What have they stolen from businesses? In 27% of cases, that was personal data of the clients, employees. In 23%, those are account data, and 21% of cases is commercial secret. Why do we have this type of stolen data? First of all of this data can be easily sold on dark web, or this data can be used for further attacks. For example, if you use login data to get into the account, sell the data for other attacks, etc. Another reason for attack is stealing mostly stealing login data, personal data, and payment data. Credit card data, of course, for getting financial benefit, and login info can be used to get into the account. And I'll be also now speaking about the trends of remote work, meaning not all of the employees are getting today corporate workstations for remote work. Therefore, private individuals are using their home PCs or Macs, computers to access corporate accounts. And it's much easier to hack personal account as opposed to getting through corporate firewall. So the individual data of users also is worthy. It is possible to connect to private computer of any individual and therefore track person's activities, load spyware, collect login to get into RDP of the corporate account. So, I've been speaking about the markets of access. You can see that on the slide. Couple of announcements. The access markets have also been in the first quarter of 2021. We have actually discovered the increased demand on buying access, meaning attackers are hacking the access to a certain company, selling it, getting money. This is very often these days. And low-qualified hackers, this is the bread and butter for the low-qualified hackers. Simple vulnerabilities, scanning network, finding vulnerable hosts, and getting the access. But working with critical risks is something that they cannot do because they're just not proficient enough. That is why they are actually... That is why they're selling their stolen info on the dark web. I mean, they've done some work, but more qualified hackers can buy the data and make more damage, do more damage, stealing something more valuable, something more significant for the company, or launch the ransomware attack. So, what were the attackers doing in 2020? What ways they have been using? First of all, of course, different sorts of malware and social engineering. Less often hacking, which is the exploit of vulnerabilities at the perimeter of the network of the company. So, speaking about hacking, the most popular vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities of the software for remote work, meaning Pulse Secure VPN, Citrix products, and simple and easy RDPs, plain and simple. And it's all about the pandemic. When people began working remotely, they needed to buy different sorts of software for that, and of course, that was the most vulnerable link in the chain. Therefore, you can see here the groups that mostly use these vulnerabilities. К примеру, уязвимости PulseSecure, Citrix и Salesforce, которые довольно популярные решения. Их используют в своей практике Revil и Netwalker. Это довольно-таки крупные операторы программно-помогателей, которые славятся тем, что сумма их выкупов просто баснословная. То есть там счет идет на десятки миллионов. И, собственно,
От этих злоумышленников проще всего защититься — это
the easiest way to defend against this is, of course, vulnerability management in the
То
organization,
есть закрыть все
meaning
бреши
closing all of the
и
breaches
устанавливать
and
своевременное обновление безопасности.
updating security on a regular basis. So different sorts of malware that has been used.
Атаки совершались с использованием шифровальщиков.
Of course, ransomware mostly 45%.
На втором месте по популярности шпионское ПО, оно позволяет получить как раз всю интересующую злоумышленников информацию. На третьем месте в топе это вредоносное ПО для удаленного управления. На мой взгляд, недооцененное злоумышленниками, так как позволяет не только собрать всю информацию с зараженного хоста, но и, допустим, продвинуть атаку дальше, то есть изначально можно собрать всю инфу, а потом запустить того же шифровальщика и получить еще финансовую выгоду со всей атаки. То есть окупить все свои усилия. Частных лиц чаще всего атаковали с использованием шпионского программного обеспечения. Это опять же связано с тем, что сотрудники сидят на удаленке, дома, можно собирать информацию с домашних компьютеров. На втором месте банковский троян. Он позволяет украсть учетные данные для доступа в мобильные банки, онлайн-банки и украсть данные платежных карт. То есть воспользоваться именно непосредственными программным обеспечением для монетизации своей атаки. Наиболее подробно надо рассмотреть способы распространения. Как же получить такой вредонос на свою рабочую станцию или на свой домашний компьютер? Если мы говорим об атаках на организации, то в 70% атак, 71% атак использовалась именно электронная почта. То есть чаще всего злоумышленники по старинке пытаются эксплуатировать наш интерес каким-то письмам, сводкам, данным, которые они нам пытаются продать. В 2020 году был особый такой тренд в социальной инженерии — это использование тематики ковида. Злоумышленники продавали санитайзеры, перчатки,
sanitizers, gloves, masks.
В моменты, когда еще
At
не
the
было
points
вообще известно, как
when
лечить
nobody knew how to
инфекцию,
treat the infection,
злоумышленники
the
даже
attackers were
продавали
even
лекарства.
selling
То есть
treatment
у
for
них уже
COVID.
всё было
I
известно,
mean,
для
they
них
had
всё
it
было
all.
понятно,
It was clear to
никаких
them
тайн
right
загадок
away.
не было.
Not a single
До
secret
того, как
there.
появилась информация о
Before
производителях вакцин, о том,
even
что
the
вообще
vaccines
требуется
came out to
апробации,
be,
злоумышленники уже
before
обладали
even
какой-то
vaccines
вакциной,
trials,
которую продавали,
the
пытались
attackers
продать
already had vaccine samples that they
обычным
were ready to
пользователям
sell
с
to
помощью
simple
социальной
and
инженерии.
ordinary users
В
using the tools of
24%
social
атак
engineering.
использовались как раз
24% of
такие
cases,
уязвимости.
they've
Здесь
used
следует сказать,
vulnerabilities,
что
and
такой
here
тренд
it is
вообще
important to
появился
highlight that this
на
particular
самом
trend
деле
is a result of, I mean, mostly appeared in the second and third quarter. In the second quarter, we've noticed that there are more vulnerabilities being exploited. Attackers were mostly trying to use the exploits to break into the companies. And in Q3, we have highlighted that as a particular trend because the number of attacks with the use of vulnerabilities has increased and turned out to be almost 40%. And only in 3% of cases, in the organizations and companies, the attackers are trying to distribute malware with the use of the website. This is a bit more complex. I mean, you need to make the employees somehow to get to a certain website, upload certain files or download them, and mostly, of course, there are certain policies of controls and access control in the companies, so it's impossible to install anything. Therefore, it's mostly easy to do that when private individuals are being attacked. In the 32% of cases, that was email, and another 30% of cases that were website. Of course, it is possible to break into websites to spread the malware, or it is even possible to make up fake resources. And in 15% of cases, the malware software was the part of the official app stores, like Google Play Store or App Store. I mean, before installing anything, be sure that you are actually installing the real piece of software, but not a fake. I mean, be sure that this is the legitimate piece of software. In addition, please do not install the softwares from websites. That is odd these days. Please do prefer the App Store. So, let us talk about ransomware. I wanted to tell a story using 4 facts. Fact number 1. Let's look at the diagram on the right. Here's the number of ransomware attacks. In Q3, every second attack with the malware was made particularly with ransomware. I mean, that is a bit frightening because so often they're being used. It has never been so often that they are used. So let us talk about figures. $1.1 million US. That is the average ransom paid. I mean, it's not the requested ransom. The request could be like with the Acer company, there was a request of $50 million for ransom in a ransomware attack. But $1.1 million is the average salary of the ransomware attackers. One attack, $1.1 million per one campaign, for one company, per one attack. Another fun fact. There's this ransomware attack called Travel. These guys, Rook. So these guys, having analyzed all of the attacks that they have made, are spreading their malware. I mean, the cycle of attack is happening from 2 to 5 days, from entering the company to actually launching the encryption software. Meaning in 5 to 8 days of work, you get $2 million. Congrats. And the upcoming 2 ransoms is a damage. This is a lot of money. This is particular for large businesses. Smaller companies, of course, are not paying that much. The damage is not that great, but still it is colossal even for them. I mean, you can actually read into the articles. Here are QR codes where you can learn about these things in detail. About the attacks, why a particular ransomware was paid. Now, the victims. Of course, ransomware attackers are very particular in the choice of their victims. The first thing that they have been doing in 2020 is the check of the financial state of the company before attacking. I mean, attackers are actually studying the income, the turnover, the profits of the company, evaluate how much they have earned, and then, based on the figures, they request a sum which for the company is acceptable, more or less. Meaning, with the turnover of $100 million, requesting $500,000 or $1 million is not that much. I mean, the company was mostly greedy because restoring after ransomware attack is a bit too hard. And by the way, they offer you the decryptor after the attack. And of course, they're stealing info during the attack. During the attack, they're also stealing all of your confidential data. That's another feature. Personal data, commercial data, trade secrets, etc. I mean, they're promising that they're not going to distribute data if you pay the ransom. Second strategy is spying. Intelligence. Certain ransomware operators get into the network and do not do anything. They do not start the procedure of encryption. They study the data, study the infrastructure. So then they find the weakest points, the biggest vulnerabilities, and then launch the encryption process in the directories where the info is staying, and in the critical directories for the company, therefore making the irreparable damage for the company, so there's no chance that the company does not pay the ransom. Top 3, the most attacked industries are healthcare companies, governmental bodies, and industrial companies. A few words about healthcare bodies, healthcare companies. I'll talk about that probably later. How the ransomware is being distributed. How can you get ransomware in your computer? First of all, of course, email. Good old email in 64% of incidents in 2020. That's the way ransomware has been delivered. In 32% of cases, that was delivery via the exploits of vulnerabilities. That's pretty straightforward. Certain companies, like Revel, the operator of ransomware, they just published the announcement that they're looking for people on a team, like they're hiring the attackers. And in that announcement, they noticed that they don't want to attack with email. We want to exploit vulnerabilities. We're looking for the employees who will be able to actually do that, and not only attack via email, but also via other exploits. Now let us follow the other trend. Well, conditionally new. In 2020, all over the world were speaking about this, particularly in December when SolarWinds attack was revealed. Let us talk about the attack briefly if you don't know about it. Well, the attack was made in the following way. The attackers entered the network of the SolarWinds company. They found the source code for Orion platform. That is the product of the company, Orion. It's been used by 18,000 clients. And the attackers added destructive code, piece of destructive code, into the product. When the platform was updated, the code was delivered to all of the 18,000 clients. And the list of those who was damaged by this attack is very, very large. So what are the consequences for SolarWinds? First of all, the stocks of the company dropped by a factor of many. You can see it on the slide. And still, the company cannot restore, cannot rebound. And, of course, FireEye, the company that produces their solutions, has suffered as well. FireEye lost the pen test info, which was stolen during the attack. Now the attackers have a huge number of exploits for real vulnerabilities, and the attackers can do whatever they want with them. And we're waiting for the incidents like that, because it's a sin not to use that sort of tool. Next case, Blackbaud. Blackbaud is the case when you begin to think, oh my God, this tremendous damage with such a low ransom, like $1.1 million. But the loss is $50 million. Blackbaud promises that, no, you should not pay. It's a mistake to pay. Let me explain. So Blackbaud is a provider for cloud solutions. It was attacked by the ransomware, and during the attack, the attacker stole clients' data, banking info, social security numbers, and logins of the clients. So the company decided that they don't want this data to be distributed on the net. They want to preserve privacy of their clients, and they wanted to keep attack a secret. So they paid the ransom. The attackers are saying, cool, we deleted the data. We are not going to distribute anything. We're good. You're good. In a while, the clients of Blackbaud began to discover their data online. And it's important to notice that, of course, the clients also went to court, and there is a number of class action lawsuits against Blackbaud as a result. So Blackbaud lost $3.2 million in 3 months. So they actually had to spend another $3 million on the restoration of the infrastructure. Now let us talk particularly about industries. Let us begin with the governmental bodies, which are in the top. 7 out of 10 attacks are using malware, and those are spyware and ransomware 50-50. 65% of social engineering is the sign that mostly governmental bodies are being attacked with very simple phishing techniques. And 19% is just straightforward hacking, which means that the obvious vulnerabilities are being exploited rarely, relatively rarely. Attacks on industrial companies. The number of attacks in 2020 there has increased by 91%, which is doubled, literally almost. Mostly, again, malware and social engineering here. By the way, the share of hacking here has increased significantly from 8 to 21%. Which means that this is a pretty, that is the vulnerability that's being often exploited. Mostly, the attackers are looking for financial benefit. These, because mostly the attacks are ransomware attacks. Healthcare companies, I could be speaking a lot here, that the pandemic, of course, affected this industry very strongly in 2020, and the number of attacks, therefore, has increased by 91%, again almost double, because this is a very lucrative piece of industry. And many attackers have been even noting that they're not going to attack healthcare because, of course, healthcare is under strain. These days they need to handle it. That's why we will be noble and not attack healthcare companies. But even though the attackers were claiming this, in fact, we see that every quarter there were a lot of attacks. So if the attackers are promising that they're not going to distribute your data, if you pay, well, they will. Healthcare companies have suffered a lot, and there are a few examples. For example, Universal Health Services chain of hospitals in the US. Because of the ransomware attack, the employees were actually facing the situation that they could not make the appointments to their patients. They could not get the results from diagnostics. They could not even provide urgent healthcare assistance because the patients were literally waiting for the system to go back up again after the ransomware attack. Another horrible case in the Vermont University Hospital. After the ransomware attack there, the doctors had to, with memory, restore the protocols of chemotherapy. So the patients didn't even have time to wait for the solutions of the infrastructure problems. And often when the hospital cannot provide urgent assistance, that may lead to tragedy, like in the Düsseldorf hospital in Germany. There, the ransomware attack led to the problem that urgent medical help was not given to the patient. She was sent to the neighboring hospital, and she died on the way. Next industry that was under attack in 2020, yeah, it was a set point, wasn't it? Okay, next, a bit more fun, retail. Retail is under target, under strike. Of course, the attacks are increasing in Q2 and Q3 2020. Q2, of course, was the period when business was transitioning online, putting up their websites and platforms to sell goods and services, and those platforms and websites were often underprotected, and the attackers were using that actively. So these industries were mainly attacked by the mage card approach. The point of the attack is that the platform to sell goods and services is vulnerable, obviously. Those vulnerabilities are at the tip of the tongue of everybody. So, I mean, even companies themselves are saying, here's the vulnerability, please install the patch. But for some reason, businesses are not doing that. And therefore, the share of stolen data of payment cards is increasing because the vulnerabilities that are of these platforms allow integrating script on the payment page. Therefore, the script allows collecting data that are put in by the users.
And of course, the user does put banking details there. In addition, ransomware is also operating in this area. There is a South Korean retailer that was attacked by ransomware, and they used the following tactics. They tried to do intelligence on a local basis. So they were in the network of the company for a year, and they introduced some other malware into the system, not just ransomware. So they infected POS terminals. The POS terminals got clients' data that was later sent to the attackers. The attack was revealed when the operators decided to launch their main process, that is to say, to encrypt computers. Then they realized that something is wrong. So they revealed the attack, they revealed what kind of data they were losing, and now the clients of the company may become victims of attacks in the form of fake banking cards. So the amount of data that was stolen allows to fake banking cards. There were no CVV codes there, but the data is sufficient to make a fake card and pay by this card. Now, a couple of words about forecast. What do we expect in 2021? We do expect more ransomware attacks. There is no reason to believe that their share will reduce in the nearest future. In the first quarter of 2021, we have witnessed a new tactic that started in the fourth quarter of 2020. In the first quarter of 2021, we noticed that it was being used very actively. So the ransomware attacks a company. They steal data. Naturally, they steal personal data, account data, clients' data. Then they tell the company, if you don't pay the ransom, we'll tell your clients about the fact that the data was stolen through the attack on your company. If the company says that it's not ready for that, they have to pay the ransom. If they don't care, the attackers inform clients. Clients are afraid of losing their data. They try to convince the management of the company to pay the ransom. So there will probably be even more ransomware there. The next trend is the increase of the number of attacks on cloud services and virtual infrastructure. This trend started in the third quarter. We noticed an increase of the number of attacks on telecommunication companies. In the fourth quarter, we noticed an even bigger increase, and soon we will publish some analytical data on our website, and there we consider the attacks in greater detail. We also describe what the attackers are interested in, and I would like to reveal you a piece of secret. They are very much interested in 5G networks. The next trend is the increase of the number of supply chain attacks. I've mentioned that already. It is very convenient for attackers because there are a lot of victims. Now, speaking about healthcare, healthcare organizations will still be on the top of most vulnerable organizations. There will still be a lot of attacks on those institutions. Perhaps there will be a small reduction in the number of attacks over healthcare organizations if the pandemic goes down or is even over, because in that case there will be less attacks and the industry will be able to feel more secure in terms of IT attacks. And the last trend is the growth of access sales markets. I have already talked about that. On dark web, you can see not just accesses sold, but also some services. So some attackers say, we can hack any company. Tell us which company you need to be hacked, and we will do that. And of course, there are some customers for this kind of services. So we will witness the increase of this market this year for sure. That's the end of my presentations. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be happy to entertain your questions. Morning, colleagues. I have a question. You have been mentioning huge figures of $1 million, for example. How do they get money? Because it is clear that you cannot just transfer that ransom to some kind of account. Most probably these are bitcoins. Can you really track them? How do attackers work in this area? Well, actually, everything is quite interesting here. There are some closed-door networks, and attackers can find some services to get money. They create accounts there. Naturally, they do it through Bitcoin because it's very difficult to track there. It's not a wire transfer because in that case, of course, they would have been caught already. Attackers are trying to find various ways to withdraw money, and if you write me an email, I'm going to send you a detailed scheme about how they do it. I have another question. There was some interesting piece of analytics per country. Speaking about industry, we are now witnessing the development of 4.0 industry. Do you have any information about Russia in that area? Because we have been talking to customers and especially small companies are not really considering such a development. Do you have any statistics about Russia? Speaking about industry, actually, if I speak about the Russian segment, there are groups such as Tennis Scouts that often attack Russian industries and Russian companies, and they usually use social engineering to hack a company and get control over the company. There is also an RTM group. It is being tracked by our experts, and more than 100 phishing mailouts were tracked, and such emails include Trojans inside, and then they intrude into the company's operation. Speaking about global statistics, I think that in spite of the fact that this is global statistics, we still can apply it to the Russian reality, because often our companies just don't inform us about the fact that they were attacked. So I cannot really tell you which kind of malware is most predominant in Russia. It's quite difficult to say so, because Russian companies usually try to hide these things. They try to recover the situation themselves. And we also discussed malware with some of our colleagues, and my colleagues said that ransomware is most widespread, but there are some problems. The industry is very much segmented. Critical infrastructure, for example, is very much separated from the rest of the company. That is why it is not suffering so often. And the other parts of the companies are being attacked very often. So due to that, we cannot really say what's the statistics for the Russian Federation, but I suggest that we use global statistics and apply it to the Russian Federation, because it seems to me, and I'm even sure, that the global statistics does reflect the situation in Russia as well. Any other questions? Colleagues, we will now have a break until 1 p.m. and at 1 p.m. we will have a round table, Economics, Practical Cybersecurity.